physical attacking damage.
Yeah, well, we are going to get into this Swiss round 11 here. Francesco leading out with that Thunderous and the Urshifu, and Giuseppe leading with their tried and tested Raging Bolt and that Incineroar.
Yeah, Incineroar is here to play. It can go for that fake out. Raging Bolt is going to activate its photosynthesis thanks to its item here, so it's going to get that boost up, as now you have the option. Who do you go for the fake out into?
Well, that's the thing. I think you want to protect your Raging Bolt more than anything. I think doing that, though, you go into the Thunderous, prevent any Eerie Impulse coming into your Raging Bolt. You kind of become susceptible to that Urshifu going for the Surging Strike, kind of for free into the Incineroar. You do have the option, though, you could spend your Terastallization if you do suspect that and really kind of capitalize in this moment and get the Calm Mind off. But then, are you in a better position turn 2? Because then that Eerie Impulse becomes active again, and then you can kind of just undo that if you're Francesco. So I don't know if the Raging Bolt here wants to go for setup, maybe a fake out, and then go for the Thunderclap maybe into that Urshifu. And because of that threat there, that's why we're maybe seeing Francesco just reposition their board into a slightly more favorable position.
I like that you avoid a potential Thunderclap, like you say, and you can reset that Intimidate in case you wanted to use your close combat. The fake out going straight into the Dragon Knight, though, that is going to break the multi-scale, leaving it a lot more vulnerable as the Eerie Impulse comes through and connects into that Raging Bolt. Its special attack will be lowered, so this Dragon Pulse will be dealing weaker damage into the Dragon Knight. Oh, I mean, the multi-scale was chipped. The Dragon Pulse coming through, that could have been big damage if Eerie Impulse hadn't come through.
Yeah, so huge. What a turn there. And, you know, we saw Giuseppe really kind of catch switches yesterday with that Dragon Pulse, effectively doing the same again there, but kind of having that cover of that Eerie Impulse, saying, okay, well, if you do go for it, I'm trying to mitigate this issue as best I can. Eerie Impulse -2 on that special attack. The Raging Bolt not quite hitting as hard as we used to. And the Dragon Knight in now, probably not in the greatest position. It does have that scale shot. It is putting a lot of pressure on to the opposing Raging Bolt. So that is something that Giuseppe is going to have to react to now, maybe giving a little bit more room to the Dragon Knight and the Thunderous to go after the Incineroar if you expect that Raging Bolt to either protect or switch out.
Yeah, it can protect, but it also has the potential Terastallization. Not going to be utilizing it this turn on that Raging Bolt, but it could turn into a Fairy type to avoid taking any Dragon type damage. I like how the Thunderous is like, I see you wanting a cheeky Calm Mind because I lowered your special attack. Well, you can't have one. And guess what? You can't have a Thunderclap either. That is going to fail. Depending on its target, either Pokemon was not valid for a Thunderclap to connect. Parting Shot, however, it will be, I think, a very happy Incineroar here to be able to get that down finally. You know, poor Raging Bolt was having a difficult time there, so Incineroar able to finally connect that and get off the field.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think the Thunderous minds too much out of the two targets that are out on the field of getting that special attack lowered or its attack lowered, because it's primarily here to support the rest of the Pokemon on Francesco's side. You can see that taunt really valuable into the Raging Bolt now, locking it into attacking options, not that Calm Mind or that Protect. So on top of that, the Eerie Impulse, if it comes out again into the Raging Bolt, is going to be even weaker than it was previously, but got a nice supporting option where Giuseppe's got that active fake out again, can fake out the Thunderous or the Dragonite if they so choose to kind of stall out the turns and maybe reposition, get into a bit of a stronger spot, because this Raging Bolt isn't really got the offensive presence that it once had.
Well, we're going to switch out one Dragon for another as the Gouging Fire joins the field. The Booster Energy is going to increase its speed, so that is going to be a very nimble Gouging Fire. It has to take a little bit of a fake out, but that's okay, because now Thunderous is free to move with another Eerie Impulse. Obviously, the Covert Cloak, meaning that there's no point going for the fake out into that Thunderous, so it's free to just go for all of these attacks. Unfortunately for the Gouging Fire, though, once again, that Raging Bolt finds its mark with the Dragon Pulse, but these Eerie Impulses paying off.
Yeah, and so many Dragon types on Francesco's side of the field. It's making it almost easy for Giuseppe just to target that slot. Even though you're kind of susceptible to those Eerie Impulse special attack drops, you're still getting respectable damage onto the field. You can see even the Dragonite coming in and taking over 2/3 of its health loss there, so really putting it a bit behind where Francesco probably wants it to be. Same with the Gouging Fire. It's not as healthy as it once was when it came in, so it does have to be a little bit careful. Another Dragon Pulse here will put it really close to in range of getting knocked out. And, you know, I think Giuseppe not panicking in this situation, staying tried, true, and tested. Nothing on his side of the field are immediately threatened to be knocked out, so he's not really having to react so much in this situation. Has a nice switch in to potentially Incineroar now to drop the attack on the Gouging Fire that's come onto the field, and the Thunderous not really that effective in this moment, so that's why we're seeing it switch out, and also Francesco kind of readjusting their board position.
Yeah, I mean, Francesco so far hasn't taken a single point of damage off any of Giuseppe's Pokemon. Although Thundurus has been putting in a lot of work neutralizing the pressure that the Raging Bolt can do, it's still at least getting damage on the board, and that's something you have to calculate towards the end game. You said it, Lee, the Incineroar could join the party, and it's here, and it's going to be able to take this Heat Crash so much better than the Rillaboom that was there before. It's able to eat that up. Does take a little bit of recoil with the Rocky Helmet, but that's okay. The Raging Pulse is not coming in your direction, it's going towards the Urshifu instead.
Yeah, I feel like there was an opportunity there for maybe a Howl switching in the Urshifu
that would have been
there,
cool.
and then you set up the attack, get around and mitigate that, intimidate that just drop. But it is risky as well at the same time. If that Rillaboom stays in and you don't check it with the Heat Crash there, then the Urshifu's way more susceptible, especially in front of a Grass type and an Electric type,
Very
how that
true.
turn started. So you can see why maybe the play didn't work out, and this is all down to Giuseppe tried and tested, staying strong and not really kind of folding or bending under these really kind of awkward positions that Francesco's putting them into.
I think that's a good point, though. The Urshifu needed to get into a safer environment. Yes, you still have the pressure of something like the Thunderclap coming through, but at -2, depending on how this Urshifu has been trained, it might be able to navigate around that.
Yeah, and now the Urshifu putting a lot of pressure onto this Incineroar, the Raging Bolt, -4 special attack, wants to get out of there. Giuseppe wants to reset those drops, so when it comes back onto the field, it's a lot stronger, and you bring in a really strong partnering Pokemon in the Rillaboom here. Take advantage of that active Fake Out and slow down some options on Francesco's side.
Oh, here come those surging strikes. We did say Francesco needs to get damage on the board, and it looks like he's going to be able to get a KO as well. Needs to get one more of these surging strikes to land. The Rocky Helmet damage is chipping away, but I think the trade-off is worth it. You've got rid of one of these dynamic duos. Rillaboom's still in the game, but Incineroar is down and out.
Yeah, it's a really good turn for Francesco to take away one of the options, the switching options for Giuseppe. Now they're only limited to 3 Pokemon rather than the 4, so those options become a little bit easier to kind of guess if they're moving in and out of the field and taking advantage of the Fake Out from that Rillaboom in particular. The one thing that Giuseppe's got the advantage of is now the Thundurus isn't on the field for Francesco, and come in, reset those drops that they took from the Eerie Impulse. It is now putting a lot of pressure onto both the Urshifu with a Thunderclap and also a Dragon Pulse into either target, super effective into the Gouging Fire, so you have to be a little bit careful there. And have you got the switches in the back? We know all the Pokemon that Francesco has available to them. The Grassy Glide, immediate threat onto that Urshifu as well. So Francesco not in the best of spots, even though they've just taken a Pokemon from Giuseppe. I think the momentum swing is all in Giuseppe's favor right now with this board position of the Raging Bolt and the Rillaboom.
Well, the Raging Bolt definitely was the one swinging that momentum. Once it got off the field, you had that Incineroar in that was kind of almost like candy for the Urshifu to try and grab, and that's exactly the trap that Francesco fell into, because now you've opened up the opportunity for Raging Bolt to come back in so naturally. Urshifu leaves the field, and Thundurus is like, okay, I see a Raging Bolt, I see I'm needed back in action, as Terrestrialization is going to take to the stage. So these trainers wanting to shake things up a little bit further. The Gouging Fire will turn into a Fairy type, so this leaves it a lot less vulnerable to that Raging Bolt. Can no longer be hit by those super effective Dragon Pulses. It will now be immune.
Yeah, it's a great terrestrialization to get around that threat of the Dragon Pulse. Figure coming into that slot, don't want to allow that the Gouging Fire to even attack this turn, and there it is. There's a key moment Giuseppe's waited for, that Calm Mind, but quite rightly, in response to that, Francesco bringing the Thundurus back onto the field, you said, open the door, I need to come back, I've got a job to do, and this is exactly why the Thundurus is going to be here and causing a lot of disruption, because that Eerie Impulse can be fired off again, and although the Calm Mind has boosted that special attack one stage, the Eerie Impulse will be able to undo that and take it down to -1. That Fairy Terror typing on the Gouging Fire, it's not affected by the Dragon Pulse, and you're kind of free to go for a Howl here if you want to, and you're putting a lot of pressure onto the Rillaboom as well at the same time with that Heat Crash that Giuseppe has to be a little bit more careful around, because the Heat Crash will do a lot of damage, super effective into the Rillaboom, and you can't afford to lose another one of those key pieces that you have to have next to something like the Raging Bolt that wants to set up.
Fantastic. And I mean, the Gouging Fire has a big old heart on its head for Valentine's Day as well. It got the memo for today, and it's going to be trying desperately to keep Francesco in at this game. One adjustment comes through on Giuseppe's side. We're going to see the Urshifu coming in from the back, as Thundurus does indeed land that Eerie Impulse once again. Like you said, it has to find a way to counteract the offensive pressure from these Calm Minds. Obviously, the special defense boost stays in play, but that's not really going to be valid into this Gouging Fire. There comes the Howl. Now, this is a nice way to start setting up. Gouging Fire is like, okay, Raging Bolt, you can no longer touch me for good damage. I need to now use this to my advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's to the detriment of the Raging Bolt now. The Urshifu comes onto the field for Giuseppe, is going to apply a little bit more pressure, but in front of an Electric-type Pokemon like Thundurus, isn't really sitting in the most comfortable of spots right now. Has to watch out for Thunder Wave as well. It's a speed control option that Francesco has access to. We didn't talk about in team preview, but if the Thunder Wave comes off onto the Urshifu, that's something that Giuseppe wants to try and avoid going forward in this match. And we are, in response to this situation right now, seeing the terrestrialization, and it will be into that Urshifu, trying to mitigate that weakness to electric types that are right front and center in front of it.
I think this is nice, like you say. It's going to give it a little bit more flexibility on the field because it's not going to have to worry about the electric type damage. The Aqua Jet comes through to get a bit of an edge on priority as the Raging Bolt follows up with a Thunderclap, and it does get the knockout. The speed is indeed what Giuseppe needed to get the KO on that Gouging Fire.
Yeah, we talked about earlier in the match, every decision that these trainers make from start to finish is so important, and it comes in that Dragon Pulse catch earlier on in this match, doing that initial damage to the Gouging Fire is so pivotal in allowing it to get knocked out. And like you've just pointed out, the paralysis effect here from the Wild Bolt Storm is kicking in, and that Urshifu is now paralyzed. That's going to be beneficial for Francesco to try and catch up in this game because they've lost a real key part of their team just now.
Well, you said the Thunderous would likely be wanting to go for the Thunder Wave to try and slow down that Urshifu, but hey, if you can get it from a secondary effect on the Wild Bolt Storm and get damage for your troubles, that's a really nice way to try and get revenge onto that Urshifu. Fantastic playthrough coming from Francesco, but Giuseppe having that priority to identify a key threat on the opposing side, really nice play. Particularly if you'd gone for the Terra Steel and the Urshifu, you would then be very vulnerable to a potential heat crash.
You would indeed, and I think the thing now is Francesco's resources that they've got are solo health. It looks like the Dragonite might, even at -1 on the Raging Bolt, is the Thunderclap going to be enough to pick up the knockout? There's that combination again of just get the chip that you need with the Aqua Jet and then follow up with the Thunderclap, and that's probably enough because of that initial Dragon Pulse damage that it got caught with earlier in this game, making things very difficult for Francesco because the Dragonite comes in here full health. You're saying, well, this is a different game completely, but Giuseppe laying the foundations early in this match and making it difficult for Francesco to get that momentum swing right now. But not over. The Dragonite comes in. It is putting a lot of pressure onto that Raging Bolt. If it can get a scale shot off into that Pokemon, then that is huge. Maybe you could try and protect it here. Go for a Thunder Wave into the Raging Bolt. Well, you can't because it's an electric type and it's also switching off the field.
Yeah, Raging Bolt's like, no, I'm not going to mess around with Thunderous anymore. I'm not going to let you get up to any plans. Let's bring the grassy terrain back on the field because my grounded Pokemon can benefit from that. On the opposing side, they're both flying, so cannot get that additional recovery. The Urian Pulse instead will land on the Rillaboom. It doesn't mind about this. Its special attack is worthless to it. But the Scale Shot, however, is something it doesn't want to take. Dragonite really trying to utilize these loaded dice to get as many rolls on the board. It's going to be guaranteed 4, but can it get 5 to push the Rillaboom over the edge?
It looks like it's hitting 4 times here. Still doing some very nice damage, though. But that defense drop not really going to be that beneficial in front of the Urshifu. That is going to fire out a Surging Strikes. And even though it is resisted, it is going to be enough. That defense drop is the sacrifice of that Scale Shot. And what a nice switch there to preserve the Raging Bolt, bring in the Rillaboom. And it's a Pokemon that can come onto the field. It doesn't really care how many Eerie Impulses you fire its way. It's going to shrug those off and still carry on with its game plan.
And even in the endgame, if you have a Raging Bolt versus the Thunderous, for example, Raging Bolt's going to have the advantage being able to hit it well with that Dragon Pulse. And so really, I think if you're Giuseppe, you're identifying that it's the partner Pokemon that's really disruptive because Thunderous, particularly now Urshifu's Terrestrialized, isn't really a threat to any of the other Pokemon. It's just annoying to deal with if you're the Raging Bolt. So let's get rid of everything else and then we can clean up and focus down on Thunderous for the endgame.
Yeah, it looks like it will all come down and rest on Thunderous's shoulders for the remainder of the match as a Grassy Glide is going to be enough to pick up this Urshifu. And it's a common theme throughout this match where we've seen the initial damage put everything else in range for these priority attacks that Giuseppe leans into. Thunder Wave coming out into the Rillaboom, so it does have a chance not to attack. Not the case as the Grassy Glide comes out, picks up that easy knockout onto the opposing Urshifu.
Rillaboom too strong. It does get the paralysis landed, but will be able to get the knockout in return as Urshifu also breaks 3 of that potential paralysis chance to get some good damage down onto Thunderous. Even though it's going to, leave itself a little bit vulnerable now following up, I think the fact that Giuseppe still has 3 Pokemon remaining against the final one on Francesco's means he has a good advantage to take this game 1.
Yeah, the critical hit helps speed things up here, but like you say, I mean, both targets paralyzed, but you've still got a full health Raging Bolt in the back, and because of that, we do see the game cancelled and Giuseppe taking game 1 here. And yeah, it didn't seem like it was in that kind of controlling position, but really when you look down a little bit deeper, the foundations were starting to be made at the beginning of the game, and it all started to pay dividends towards that end game where he was in control and made life very difficult from Francesco.
I mean, I think you called it perfectly. We had a beautiful flashback to the way we ended day 1 with Giuseppe's Raging Bolt calling the perfect switch-ins with those Dragon Pulses. Although the beginning of the game, Francesco was able to get some good damage off, remove the Incineroar very early from play, it meant that this Raging Bolt could come into play. And the Raging Bolt was able to get the Dragon Pulse down onto the Gouging Fire and onto the Dragon Knight, both times when Francesco switched it in, giving it unnecessary damage. Even though the Thunderous was putting in so much work with the Eerie Impulse, the damage kept stacking up. And like you said, Lee, it then enables some priority attacks, like we saw the Aqua Jet, the Grassy Glide, Thunderclap, all these moves coming forward towards the end to be able to get KOs.
Yeah, and I think it's a real testament to Giuseppe's game plan there, where, you know, the natural kind of reaction to taking an Eerie Impulse on your Raging Bolt -2, you think, it's kind of dead weight at the moment. I need to get off the field as soon as possible to reset those drops. Well, he said, no, I'm just going to stay on the field. I'm not immediately threatened with any sort of knockout here. I can just sit quite comfortably, position my partnering Pokemon to help support me and get that situation where I can switch it out at the right time, but I'm going to get damage on the field when I can, and it was really pivotal. And you can identify in Francesco's team the Dragon types that are there that could potentially come to this game, and then pick those off, and exactly what happened in Game 1. So some big adjustments needed from Francesco in Game 2.
Well, adjustments on both sides of the field. Chien-Pao and Urshifu are coming out for Giuseppe, whereas on the opposing side, you still have that Thunderous hoping to catch a Raging Bolt. We've got Ting-Lu by its side.
Well, we talk about how important leads were for our trainers. I mean, the perfect lead here for Giuseppe with that Chien-Pao adjustment here, putting pressure instantly onto the Thunderous here. There's a Dark type as well, so it's not going to have to worry about that pranks the Thunder Wave, and it puts on a lot of pressure on the opposing Ting-Lu alongside the Urshifu now that has that sort of Ruin boost that can really cause a lot of problems for both of these Pokemon if they're left on the field and unsupported like they are right now.
Exactly, it can leave you in a very vulnerable position. Ting-Lu as well going to be able to utilize the potential Terra Blast coming through from a Terra Poison. That's something that we need to be aware of, with a clear Amulet, meaning it's not going to have any Intimidate drops coming through from a potential Incineroar in the back. Yeah,
and a very threatened position here. We are seeing a Terastallization come out from that Ting-Lu, so caught so well, Lu. Just wants to get rid of that water and that ice weakness that they had. Just put a bit more stability on the field for Francesco going forward in this turn 1, and just wanted to play things out. I'll just see what you're going to do. Protect on that Urshifu.
Well, Thunderous was going for the Thunder Wave down into the non-Dark type on the field, so it won't have its priority blocked. Could potentially have tried to slow that Urshifu down right away, but Chien-Pao is going to try and remove Thunderous from the game. Gets that Icicle Crash down. That's a solid one-hit KO. Removes already such a vital threat, and if there is a Raging Bolt in the back, I am sure it is celebrating right now.
We talked about it yesterday, Lou. The false sense of security that Giuseppe leads their opponent into.
Yes.
The whole Game 1 said, I'm not really going to touch that Thunderous. It can stay there. It can do what it wants throughout the game. It switched in, switched out. It was not getting attacked. This time around, though, like, I'm going to take the opportunity when it's there. I'm going to go after it and remove it as quick as possible so it's not a threat going forward. Now taking away that paralysis chance. And now you've got the Gouging Fire coming onto the field. Yeah, it's in a not a bad position, but it still has to be wary about this Swords of Ruin boosted Surging Strikes that could come out from this Urshifu. And the Ting-Lu still not in the most comfortable positions either. And not Vessel of Ruin isn't really paying any sort of benefit right now for Francesco.
Exactly, we've got all physicals out there on the field at the moment. Hal, however, is going to come through and say, oh, you said physical attackers? How about we boost up our attack 1 apiece as well? That's going to obviously happen on the Gouging Fire and the Ting-Lu. So any physical attacks that wants to come through are going to be even more formidable. The Icicle Crash lands on the Ting-Lu, does about a quarter damage as the Surging Strikes follow up. And you may have turned yourself into a poison type, but with the Sword of Ruin on the field as well, this makes it so formidable. Look at Ting-Lu, so low in HP after this turn.
Yeah, that is so much damage there. And the chance of a flinch from the Icicle Crash actually pays off. And there we go. That makes it so difficult for Francesco to get any sort of momentum here. You think, okay, well, you can take this double up one time only. That amount of damage is, and the flinch there just really slowing and putting a stop to any sort of plan that Francesco had. The Gouging Fire, though, still has that attack boost, so not all hope hasn't been lost for Francesco here. Does still have a chance. The Ting-Lu pretty much dead weight at the moment. If you can get an attack off with it, that's great, but is Giuseppe going to allow you to attack with it? I don't think so. Probably want to target into that slot just to cover it. But this Gouging Fire has to be careful around these Surging Strikes. They're going to hit for critical hit damage. Can you and will you be able to remove the Urshifu? The one thing that you do have is the Breaking Swipe. You can go for that double target attack. It will lower the attack on both of these attackers. So there we go. We do see it.
Yeah, breaking swipe also comes through, gets some good chip down onto that Chi and Pao, and is lowering that attack, making them a little less scary. But an Icicle Crash going into a Dragonite, that is always terrifying, but this time multi-scale was intact, so it was just able to hang on, but not for long, because once again, Giuseppe using the double up, the targeting to be able to get damage and knockouts on the board. He is in such control, Lee.
Yeah, really unfortunate switch for Francesco, but Giuseppe catching that Dragonite with the Icicle Crash, not the Pokemon that you want to come in on that 4x super effective move. Now the Tinglu re-entering the field, it hasn't got that Howl. It's going to go down to a Surging Strikes. Obviously, that Unseen Fist ability able to hit through even a Protect here, leaving the Gouging Fire against all four. But we lock it in, Lou, and we have our winner.
Wow, Francesco, I think, not wanting any more damage to befall his beloved Pokemon, leaving Giuseppe Musicco the winner of that set. Game 1, there was a lot of back and forth, but Game 2, it was all about Giuseppe, it was all about Chi and Pao, it was all about the Urshifu.
Yeah, and what an adjustment. You've got a really